This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
And good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Saturday Debate Show with Jamie Pags, the Philadelphia sports guy, Jack Hirsch, the great boxing writer, and of course, Mac McGrath, the man and the brains behind the whole operation. Welcome to the Saturday Debate Show. Hello, gentlemen. How you all doing today?
I'm good, Doc, but you missed one of your lines about Mac and the birthday boy.
You missed
your line
all right, so
there.
hold on a minute. And introducing the birthday boy, 26 years old today,
Yes.
Mac.
Yes.
Happy birthday, Mac.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. And if you're saying I'm the brains behind the operation, we're in trouble right now getting off. So
It only goes up from here because now you are back on the show with us here, and we took you off. We bring you back, and it's your birthday. Do you have any big birthday plans? What are you going to do to celebrate?
no, my wife made me a cake, and my sister might come over, and small things. So we'll see what I get. I mean, I don't know. I know I got a cake coming and a couple of gifts. So.
Oh, gifts are always good. If you get something good, you have to share it with us next week. Show us what you got.
I will.
We can't share the cake because we're all in different locations, of course. I think
You're
actually
right.
we're all in different states, right? I'm in New Jersey. Pags is in Pennsylvania. Jack's in New York, and you're in Connecticut. We are
That's correct.
covering the Northeast streaming sports area. We just need somebody from Massachusetts on here. All right, so let's get right to the debate. Every week we get a whole bunch of debate questions, most often delivered to us from Jack. And we're going to start off in football. And one of the big football stories has to do with a wide receiver who is a Super Bowl champion and a former Giant. And the question is, are we making too big a deal over Odell Beckham and his free agency? What do you think?
Well, I'll take it first. There's a saying, you need your money now as opposed to saving your money, okay? And these NFL teams, they need their players now. I mean, if Odell Beckham Jr. can't produce at a high level right now, do you think these teams like the Dallas Cowboys, first and foremost, are thinking of next year? I mean, they need a way to beat the Philadelphia Eagles when they play them in the playoffs. And if it's the OBJ of old, he's definitely a big asset, a very big asset. If he's a good version of OBJ, he's an asset. If he's a diminished version, he's not. And if he can't get on the field altogether, who cares about next season? You'll worry about it next season. And right now, we don't know his readiness as far as getting back on the field in the next, few weeks. So I think we're making too big a deal out of it because I noticed the Cowboys have cooled off a bit on the OBJ saga. So, yeah, the answer is too big a deal we're making out of it.
I would happen to agree with you, Jack. I think the timeline is 5 weeks or so. So if he's able to play, it's going to be into the playoffs. And that's 5 weeks, and without even any, running through drills, getting the timing straight with his quarterbacks, et cetera, et cetera. He's a unique talent, but if he's not going to be ready, I mean, maybe he might help you win a playoff game, and maybe that matters a lot, but that's only going to matter to a very few teams. And there's no guarantee he's even going to be ready when the playoffs roll around. So, right, OBJ is a great football player. Sometimes he's also a big distraction. There seems to be things that always something happened with an airplane flight, and there were things with the Giants when he was on the Giants. I mean, so if you bring a guy in who's also a distraction, I don't know if that helps you as you're preparing for a big playoff game. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'll go. I pretty much agree with both of you. I think it's way too big a deal. He's injured all the time. In fact, he's had 2 injuries to his leg over the past few years, so that's a concern. As you guys all said too, the physical. He hasn't been able to pass the physical. He's having problems with that, and he's just. I think we're making way too big a deal over OBJ. What do you think, Bags?
I agree. So he's now linked to the Eagles, and I'm like, the only reason why the Eagles would get him is to make sure nobody else gets him. I don't like a addition by subtraction from everybody else. I don't think the Eagles need him. I don't think the Eagles need to spend any of the money. I think that, I was hoping that the Cowboys would sign him because I don't think that I don't think he's going to be worthwhile to do anything, because even when you come back from an ACL injury, you still don't trust your leg until you trust it. And that takes time as well. Usually, when coming back from an ACL injury, it takes about 18 months before the player is physically able to do the things that he was able to do before the ACL injury. And this is just too quick of a timeline for him. And it's just, I think it's trumped up because of him, because of the name and because of who he is and what potential he has. I guess you'd have a ceiling with him, or that ceiling is really high, being like, oh well, he would be just even as a decoy on the field, it may be worth something. But I agree with all of you guys. Who is he?
Yeah,
He's nothing to me. He's nothing to me as far as
Well,
I'm
then
concerned.
why are the Eagles interested in him to keep him away from signing
I
with
don't
Dallas?
think that they are. I don't think that they are. They haven't met with him, but they're
look what he
linked.
did for the Rams last year. Contributed to them winning the Super Bowl.
Right, but now we're still at 9 months. So now when he's supposed to be physically able to start getting on the field, I mean, as we learned from Dallas in the physical, he's not quite able to get on the field yet. And if you're
Doc,
5 weeks away,
can I ask a question? Can I ask a question? Who would be the free agent that you would want to sign through trade or through free agency? Who would be a free agent that you would want to sign?
There are no free agents in football right now, except maybe OBJ, because he doesn't have a team. But I will throw this at you, Mac. You being a big Giant fan, do the Giants really have a more lethal receiver at this moment than OBJ would be? If OBJ could come back healthy, he's a better wide receiver than anyone that the Giants have. You can't say that for the Eagles and the Cowboys. Okay, you could say they have at least one better receiver. In the case of the Eagles, they have two. But OBJ would be better than any receiver the Giants would have right now, if he was mostly healthy.
But
so would Northeast Streaming Sports own Byron Williams.
Oh, come on. Yeah, in all due respect to Byron, OBJ was much better.
OBJ is much better, but I'm saying that Byron Williams is better than what the Giants currently have.
Yeah, I mean, they got
Mac, that's quite a dig at your Giants.
No, well, I mean, I would expect him to dig at the Giants because that's what Pags would do.
You're still holding, Mac, that the Giants will beat the Eagles at least one of the two games upcoming.
Yes,
he's hoping and praying. Hopes and dreams.
Yes, I am. And they do have Wade Robinson. I don't know if he's coming off the injury list or not, but he is a very exciting young player and does have the speed that OBJ did have. So if they can get him back in the lineup again, they'll have a guy that can go over the top and beat the defenses.
Mac, you just convinced me the Eagles are going to rout the Giants in both their games after that.
Okay.
And again, OBJ might be a great player, but you're not a great player if you're not on the football field, and you're not a great player, as Pags is bringing up, if you're injured. And as anyone knows who's come back from an injury, there's a period of time when you're just, as Pags was saying, you just don't trust that your body is going to be able to do what you need it to do. And to be the elite wide receiver in the NFL that they would be signing with the hopes that that's who Odell Beckham Jr. is really going to be, you just can't trust that that's going to happen, because he's going to be making cuts and making runs and trying to do things, jumping in the air. And there's going to be somewhere in the back of his mind, if not in the front of his mind, this doubt that he's going to be able to do those things physically. And so if you bring him in, you're going to be bringing in a diminished player. So really, I think Jack said it best in the beginning. It's really a question not about this year. It's really a question about next year, no?
Yeah,
Yes,
I
I agree.
I would say so. And for a little bit more news on the Giants, Saquon may not play. He's on injury reserve. He's got a neck problem, so he may not play during the Eagles game. So that bodes good for the Eagles. But I expect him to go out there and give it a shot. So.
But Mac, you keep bragging about Daniel Jones being this great field general. So shouldn't he be able to do things against the Eagle defense?
Well, I'll tell you.
Yeah, that pesky 19-yard line catches up with him all the time.
I'll tell you right now, Daniel Jones has big running games against the Eagles. He really does. I mean, the turf monster got him that one time, but he does have big running games against the Eagles. So maybe that'll be something that Jones can do.
Let me ask Pax, the quarterbacks ever hear you when you're in the stands?
Yes.
Has the quarterback
Sometimes
ever?
they do.
You think you could get inside the quarterback's head? Can you be loud enough for them to hear you? Because NFL
All right.
stadiums are very
So
noisy.
I will take the one instance that I know that I take full credit for. The Eagles versus the Saints in the playoffs in New Orleans. It's quiet as a pin drop in the stadium because the Saints are on offense. In the very first play from scrimmage, I had been going for 3 hours nonstop already. The first play from scrimmage was a bomb from Breeze, and literally, it got intercepted. And I said I took full responsibility for that because I was relentless on him. At one point, he looked over and just is like, does that guy ever shut up? You know what I mean? And you could just tell. And I tell you, I saw my old buddy last night as we're talking about something like this. I saw my old buddy last night, Russell Westbrook. And I said, "Hey, Russell, how you doing? It's so good to see you." He gave me the whole. I don't want to hear you. He literally blew me off like purposely, which was a lot of fun. So
I kind of wonder how Doc would handle it in one of his pitching leagues when he's on the mound, you harassing him. I have a feeling Doc wouldn't be able to find the plate.
You're wrong about that. Pags, come to one of my games. Now, here's the good news, though, Pags. If you come to one of my baseball games when I'm pitching and you whisper, you will still be the loudest fan at the game. But I thrive on adversity. And so I'm thinking if you come, you'll probably make my fastball tick up a few miles per hour. It might go from, like 48 miles an hour to 49 or even 50 miles an hour. So if you come,
and that wild pitch that would come close to me.
Yeah. Sometimes when I come inside and I hit batters, they laugh. They don't get mad at me. In the beginning, when I'd hit batters, I'd be like, sorry. Now they just get hit and they go, okay, thanks.
That was easy.
Now, Rick Sherlock is saying the Vikings are over the Jets, but that was last week, I believe.
Wait, Rick, I picked the Vikings to beat the Jets. I picked them last week. I didn't want them to win, obviously, but I did pick them.
He's not a loyal fan, Rick. He's not a loyal fan.
No, I'm a sensible fan.
Yeah, you can be a loyal fan. You can be a loyal fan and be reasonable.
Doc, no, Doc, you can't be a loyal fan.
Wait. So you get a guy like
if you pick against your own team, you're not a loyal fan.
You're a homer then.
I would agree with me.
No, you can pick against your team. Like if you're a Mets fan in 1962 and you love the Mets, you can't possibly pick them to win any game. They're not going to win.
I'm not saying you'll pick them, but you'll be there rooting for them, wouldn't you, Doc?
Oh, you can root for them and still say, I think they're going to lose.
No, that's not. No, you can't root for them and say they're going to lose. You got to root for them to win.
No, you can root for them to win. You can hope for something unlikely to happen, but that doesn't mean you're rooting against them to lose. You can love your team, but be realistic about their chances. No.
What fan is realistic, Doc?
I mean, they're playing at Buffalo this week. It's going to be hard to pick them to win that game.
Jack, if you don't pick them.
Hey, but Rick, how did they do against the NFC East?
It's a good point.
Let's see how. Yeah. Anyways, I wanted to throw that out there that they beat every team in the AFC East. They didn't do so great against the NFC East.
Not
So
at all.
here's
So-
we're talking football. So we have another great football question, and this one's a really good one. And I think we're going to have some good discussion and debate about this. The question is in regard to the greatest quarterback of all time. That might already start.
Joe
some people
Montana?
getting- No, Tom Brady. And the question is, judging strictly by this current season, is the greatest quarterback of all time still one of the top 5 quarterbacks, or is he not one of the top 5 quarterbacks this year? What do you think?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, clean the question up a little, even though you presented it very well.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
It's not his past accomplishments.
Correct.
That
It's how's this year.
they mean nothing at all at this point. Let's just talk about the Tom Brady of now, but we know what he could do based on what he did in the past.
That's not
Okay,
true.
how he is now. If you had to pick the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL right now, going forward to quarterback your team, let's say, for example, Pax, in your case, Jalen Hurts can't quarterback the Eagles anymore. You can pick a top 5 to slot in Jalen Hurts' place. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is going to be one of them. That's a no-brainer, I would think. Probably Josh Allen. And now, when we fill out the top 5, is Tom Brady going to be one of the 5? And my guess would be no, not right now. Maybe a top 10, but top 5, I couldn't say. We'd have to give it some thought who the other 3 would be after Mahomes and Josh Allen. Would it be Joe Burrow? Would it be maybe Tua? We're not counting Jalen Hurts in this. Well, let's give the Eagles as an example, slotting in. But I don't think Tom Brady makes the cut at the top 5. If he does, it's just barely, but I don't think he does.
No, not even.
Yeah, not this year, not this year specific. Because if you're grading on like even most recent events, I mean, you could say Tom Brady's no better than Baker Mayfield.
No,
So
not
it's
who's having the best year, Pags. Just how good he is now.
well, and that I understand. It's so when I think about like what has Tampa done this year, and how much does this year mimic the year that they went to the Super Bowl? They had a little bit better of a team, but they didn't start off so great, and then they went on to go on a run, and so they're a little bit off of that pace. Right now, what are they, 6-6?
It's one game off that pace.
But I mean, so it's possible that he could turn it on and do what have you. I think what barely puts him in the top 5 is that the NFL stinks right now. And when you think of quarterbacks, even at 45 years old, and you're keeping Jalen Hurts out of the top 5 because realistically he is in the top 5. And I agree with all the other 3 guys that you said, including Joe Burrows being number 4. I mean, are you going to put Kirk Cousins above Brady in the top 5?
No way.
We're not.
Right now,
We're
you
not saying how good. We're not judging on necessarily the year that they're having, how good they are going forward.
But you have to judge on. But we only have, if we're not able to look at the past, we're only able to look at this year. I mean, then you have to start to possibly include Kirk Cousins into the mix of the top 5 quarterbacks of this year.
Yeah,
and that's where I have a challenge because I can't put Kirk Cousins above Tom Brady anytime.
My question is this: would you put Kirk Cousins ahead of Lamar Jackson
this year? No.
Team?
Well, this year, no. Not including. Yeah, but you said we can't include what previous performance. We're talking about this year alone. This year alone, you have to consider.
Forward. I'm talking about moving forward, quarterbacking your team if that quarterback is healthy for the rest of the season. The top 5 guys.
But Jackson's
this season, I would have to consider Kirk Cousins above Lamar Jackson.
Well, yeah,
Moving forward
of course you would. Of course you would,
this
because
year,
Jackson's
you'd
hurt.
have to do it.
Well, Jackson's hurt, Pag. So you would have to consider
Well,
him
yeah, but
above.
I mean, even beyond Jackson, or
We're talking about
Jackson
if
has
he
not
was
had a great
healthy.
season. He's
We're
not had a
talking
great
if he
season.
was healthy, Matt.
Yeah,
If
I
Lamar
understand it, but he's
Jackson
not.
is
I mean,
healthy.
listen, there are a lot of quarterbacks a lot better than Tom Brady right now. You could even throw Aaron Rodgers in there this year. I think he's had
No
a better year.
way. Not at
I think
all.
See,
Now, listen,
absolutely not.
I think he's had a better year. He's
Aaron Rodgers.
yeah, I
no.
think he's had a better year than Brady right so far.
Now, the Buccaneers are in the playoffs right now. Am I not mistaken? They're
Yeah,
6
correct.
and 6. How many
that's-
of those wins? At least 2 or 3 of them. I can think of 2, and I don't watch all their games. They won because Tom Brady marched them down the field at the
Yeah.
end and won the game for them. A
Yeah.
top quarterback is a guy who you want to have on the field with less than 2 minutes to play, knowing that he's going to give you a better than average or a very good chance to win the game. And
But
I
Doc-
say that there's not a quarterback out there that still can do that. Tom Brady just won the game last week for them. No, he marched them down the field and they won the game.
Two
Please.
scores. Two
Please,
TDs.
Dak Prescott right now is better than Tom Brady. Tua is better right now.
See,
than
I
Tom Brady.
can't agree with you on that.
Oh,
I cannot
how can
agree with you on
with
that. Because right now the Dallas Cowboys aren't winning their games because of Dak Prescott. They're winning their games because of the defense. So realistically, Dak has not had a very good season.
Tampa's winning because of their defense, Pags.
No, Brady's marched
not
them
if you
down
look
the
at
field and
last
won a
week.
number of games.
Brady took over the most ever fourth quarter comebacks. Jumped over Peyton Manning and Ben Roethlisberger. I think it was over the past 2 months that he just took that over because he's had like 3 or 4 comebacks.
Brady's been playing forever, though. Of course,
I understand that, but and listen, the 2 quarterbacks that he jumped over were also playing forever. So I get it. It's not that's a matter of longevity. Those records get beat by having a long career where you've been down 45 times at least in the fourth quarter to be able to come back.
Yes,
so
Brady,
it's like you can't.
Brady is the luckiest quarterback in the history of football. That's all I got.
No, you can't say that a guy who's had that much success is luck. I mean, come on, it's that silly.
Listen, Doc, he was drafted in the 6th round. No, hardly any quarterback makes it from that. He had the greatest coach in the history of football, or the greatest coach today in football as his coach. He had unbelievable defense. He had a great kicker. I mean, this guy came into a perfect position.
And he also lost 2 Super Bowls because of miracles on the other team. Unbelievably great catches that were out of any sense of reasonableness. A guy catching the ball on his helmet. I mean, if he wins those 2 Super Bowls, I mean, it's at some point you can say a guy.
Truth of the matter is that if he won the 1 Super Bowl, forget the fact that the Giants beat him in that other Super Bowl, but if he won the 1 Super Bowl and completed the undefeated season, there would never have been there would never be another question. There would never be another question. So the fact that the Giants beat him, and trust me, I'm happy about that. I actually was rooting for the Giants in that game.
Really?
So it's probably absolutely. I was rooting for the Giants in that game.
Yeah, so we need to stop right here. Part of being an Eagles fan is hating.
You know what?
Giants.
So I've always looked at the Giants. I've always looked at the Giants as like the baby brother we beat up on all the time.
Oh, stop already!
I'm serious. That's how I look at that. Now I don't ever want the Cowboys to win. Never do I want them to win.
But why the Giants over the Patriots? The other division, the other league.
Yeah, at that point felt like so. I think of it in the exact same way as this. In 1976, the Russians came over with their hockey team that was supposed to be the best in the world, and they went through the entire NHL and beat everybody with only tying the Montreal Canadiens. And the last game on their schedule was the Philadelphia Flyers. And everybody who didn't live in Philadelphia hated the Philadelphia Flyers. but they were all rooting for the Flyers against that team because it was the last stand. You could not have the Russians just sweep through the NHL. And the defending Stanley Cup champions were the last team to play, and that was and everybody was pulling for the Flyers in that game. That being
Well, did
said,
they win?
it's that mentality.
You're leaving me hanging here. Did they win?
Oh, yeah, the Russians left the ice early. There's a whole video about that. Being a historian, I know you don't know much about hockey, but if you go check out the Russian, just that whole thing, Russia hockey in 1976 against the NHL and the Philadelphia Flyers. I mean, I have a VCR tape.
I remember that game. The Flyers won 4-1.
4-1,
And
correct.
I remember early in the game, they were the Broad Street Bullies, the Flyers, and the Russians were used to playing kind of a clean brand of hockey, international style. And the Flyers introduced them to goon-type hockey. They kind of roughed them up in the beginning of the game. There was no diplomacy. And later, the papers in Moscow came out with reports about the lack of sportsmanship, that they were playing for sport. The Russians and the Flyers were just goons wanting to fight, how unfair it was. But it was really a great performance by the Flyers, in that game.
Yeah, there was a pretty strong check against from Ben Wilson on one of the Russian players, and there was not a call that was done, and Russia literally, they're like, we're leaving. And that was where the whole Ed Snyder came in and said, have you paid him yet? The commissioner of the NHL was like, we have not paid him yet. And he's like, well, tell them they ain't getting paid. They don't finish this game, they ain't getting paid. And they came back out, and the Russians started to fight back a little bit. It wasn't just a pushover by the Flyers in total, but the Flyers won that game. And like I said, it was the one time, that the Broad Street Bullies were loved in the country of in the North America, because they were hated every other time. There's
Let me ask you a question here. Historically, obviously, and again, I'm not a hockey guy, so I don't really know much about hockey, but no one can be a fan of sports and not know what happened then in the 1980 Olympics, when the U.S. team obviously upsets the Russians right up in Lake Placid. So, sometimes I try to look for connections. You try to look for when it first became clear that a team might have had an Achilles heel, or that they had a weakness. And even if they win a game that you see like, ooh, that's a way that I can beat them next time. So basically the story you're telling is that the Russians came over to America. They're playing all the NHL teams, beating up every single team. And I assume it's basically that same Russian team that comes back 4 years later in the Olympics and loses to the United States. Is there a connection? And I don't know this, I'm asking the question, between that loss to the Philadelphia Flyers and the fact that they weren't able to finish the job in the Olympics? Is there some type of correlation there, or am I just making connection that doesn't?
No, not at all, because they got the better the NHL during the series. Just
Right.
The Flyers kind of sent them home on a down note, the Russians. But
that being said, it kind of was the same team. They were a little older at that point, and this was before the Olympics brought in professionals. These were amateur players. If you were a professional, if you had gotten paid to play in any level, you were ineligible to play in the Olympics. The Russians, although the team would get paid, none of the players got paid to play. So the Russians for years had the best team because they never left Russia, and it was, the league over there it was their all-star team. The KHL had an all-star team that was the Olympic team. And you said they never really got paid because they weren't really considered professionals over there. So it kind of broke that trend. ultimately the rule changed over the years for after 1980 on. They started to bring in professional players to play on these teams, and because it was now more a matter of national pride rather than gamesmanship and sportsmen, because they knew that the Russians were playing dirty, that they were saying that these guys don't get paid, so they're not professional, and so on and so forth.
Well, what happened also a few years before that, in 1972, the Soviets came to play the NHL All-Stars, an 8-game series, a summit series. And at that point, we didn't know much about how good the Soviet hockey team was. It was assumed that the NHL was completely going to dominate. It was going to be one-sided because you had the best of the NHL. And the Russians get off to a 3-1 lead, and they're booing. The fans in the U.S. are booing the United States. They go back to Russia, and they were down 3-1 in one tie. And the U.S. rallied to win the last 3. And even in the deciding game, the U.S. was down 2 goals fairly late in the game, and they rallied and pulled the game out. But you kind of remember one of the players looked like it was going to, from the United States, looked like it was going to hit one of the referees with a stick because it seems so blatant in the way the officiating. But the U.S. actually won that last game in Russia, and the Russians sent a message to the United States bench in the last 2 minutes. If the game comes out to be a tie, we're claiming victory because we scored more goals overall in the series. But the United States barely eked out a win, and it was very big in Canada, even though they were expected to dominate, the idea they could come back and win the last 3 was kind of historic. So great stuff happened before the 80 Olympics. Even people forget 1960, the U.S. Olympic hockey team was a major underdog to the Russians, and they won the gold medal in 60, 20 years before. No one talks about that, the 1960
Right.
game in Squaw Valley.
Well, and they do mention that in the movie Miracle, where the coach was actually cut from the team. He was the 24th player that wound up getting cut from the team. And so they do mention that in that where he didn't get a chance to win the gold there. So, and everybody seems to forget also that, not when they beat the Russians, didn't win them the gold. They still had to win the next game, and they had to come back to win that game. So that was the one thing that Herb was able to do with that team was able to give them some resiliency to be able to, when it came to where everybody started to get tired in the third period, that was where the U.S. was able to take over and score a good portion of goals in the third period in general because they just had better legs.
Yeah, great stuff. See, a historical lesson on hockey. Out of the blue, I did not know that the Americans had won the gold in 1960. That was a big time Olympics too. A great book was written by David Mariners about the Rome 1960, I believe it's called, about the great Olympic Games there. But I think it was a summer. I think he basically talked about the summer games. Cassius Clay, right, Jack? That's when Cassius Clay emerges on the scene.
But to bring back to where we were actually talking about, well, that it's that mentality that had me rooting for the Giants, because you could not watch Tom Brady's team, especially after all of the things about cheating and stuff like that. You were not able to just accept. There was like a little pocket of people around Massachusetts and Boston that were rooting for the Patriots, and everybody else in the country were rooting for the Giants.
And there was a house in Wyckoff, New Jersey, that I think that was rooting for both teams. We were excited about the Giants, but my son was a big Tom Brady fan. He was about 8 years old, and so he wanted Tom Brady to win too. So when your kid roots one way, at least my kids, I tend to root who they're rooting for. So yesterday I was rooting for Argentina because he's a big Lionel Messi fan. So that was same type of thing. Go Argentina!
Who is rumored to possibly be coming to the Philadelphia Union.
Yes, that's what they say.
That would be
That would be so amazing if he did, but I can't imagine that he's going to come to the MLS, into the Philadelphia
That's what
club.
they're saying, that he's coming to the MLS. It'd be interesting. You know, I was that first soccer generation, and I remember going to Giants Stadium and watching Pele. I was just a
Me
little
too.
kid. I was like 10 years old, but boy, that Cosmos were fun. And you know,
Yeah.
Franz Beckenbauer and Giorgio Canaglia and Herbert Berkemeyer, the goalie. I mean, that was a great team, of
Shep
course. And they had
Messing.
Pele.
Shep Messing.
Oh, and Shep Messing too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tony
Yeah.
Fields. I mean, it's funny how you remember
Carlos
things like,
Alberto.
yes. How you remember these guys who I haven't.
See,
thought
and I
about these
remember the
guys.
Philadelphia
Yeah.
team, so I was too young to any of the players, but it was the Philadelphia Fury that would play against those teams, because that was the name of the outdoor soccer team. Because they also had indoor soccer, because that was the Fever, and I remember them as well. So, I mean, I can go. When we start talking about history of Philadelphia sports franchises and such, soccer has had a very rich history in the city of Philadelphia in general. Some of the oldest clubs in the country are out of Philadelphia, and the Ukrainians, the Yukis, were world champions like 7 or 8 times from like the 1930s through the 1970s, as just a normal like club, out of Philadelphia, and would win world championships against like major countries, and just a
Pags?
little club in Philadelphia.
Well,
You know,
let's
Pags,
keep
when
talking
when
football.
Doc, wait a second. You know, Pags, when you say we lost our audience because of Keith Hernandez, we just lost all our audience because we're talking about soccer.
People like
Yeah,
soccer.
people love hearing about
Oh,
people love hearing about
God.
history. They love hearing about history, and they love hearing about
No.
championships.
Oh,
Well, let's keep talking about football. Let's go to
Mac
the
is a
Jets.
Mac
The
is a
different
meat and
football.
potatoes guy. Just wants to discuss baseball and football.
right. Let's go ahead.
And
So I have an
Pele.
audible for the next question. We're not going to go.
All
to
right, we're
football
going
yet,
for
but
an
I got an
audible.
audible
We're
for
not
the
going
next
to
question.
talk about the Jets yet.
Mac
All right, go
thinks
Pags.
soccer is nonsense to talk about.
Yeah, I know. We're only in the middle of the World Cup, which is the most watched television right now in the world. But
Yes,
I know
yes.
Mac doesn't pay attention to that.
No.
So
It was a great game yesterday. It goes down to a shootout, and
yeah,
Argentina was
I
great.
tell you that's a great debate question, because this also feels with hockey as well. How do you feel about this
Yeah, there you go. That's good.
shot to end a game?
No,
I'm
no.
not a fan of it. I'm not a
Yeah.
fan of it at all.
Yeah.
Playoff hockey is so exciting because they don't go to the shootouts, and they go directly to it's the golden is the one that wins the game.
I don't
and I really
understand.
wish they would do that.
You know, I get hockey because at least the net's small and the goalie's got a chance, but I don't understand the soccer. I mean, I don't know how a goalie makes a play on them kicking the penalty kicks. I mean, if you miss the net from that, come on, you shouldn't even be playing.
Hey, well,
It
you
was
saw that. You
interesting.
saw that yesterday. You saw that
Yeah.
yesterday.
That
That not
game.
only did the goalie make a couple of good saves, but
Yeah.
Argentina missed the net. So
Hit
and
the post a
it made
couple
it all go all the way down to the 5th. It went down to the very last penalty kick to win it.
It's sort of, if we want to tie it into boxing, like in the olden days, you used to just have all these fights. You know, I'm talking 100 years ago that would go 20 rounds, 30 rounds, or whatever. Right? You
Yeah,
keep going
that's
till
a
somebody
long
wins, and there's something that's much more majestic about that. Like if you just keep playing overtimes in these competitions until one team ultimately scores a goal, which it's definitely a much more pure way to finish a game than just the penalty kick routine.
Yeah, I would.
It really makes it more an iconic game. I think, when I think about that, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Jack, but when I think
okay.
of the Flyers versus the Penguins, and I want to say it was back in 95, maybe 96, where it went 5 overtimes, where, and literally they scored a goal in this, in the 5th overtime, and it was Keith Primo that scored the goal. I'll never forget that. I don't know what happened. I couldn't even tell you. I think the Devils won the Super Stanley Cup that year. But I'll never forget, that was the game of the year. Like, just going back and forth, and every shot on goal is a big deal. And you get into that third overtime, and then that fourth overtime, and then they're exhausted. They're running solely on the adrenaline of winning the game. And especially after watching that game yesterday in soccer, between the Netherlands and Argentina, there was so many chances by both teams going back and forth in the last 15 minutes. It would have been great to see another 2 periods of 10 minutes each to see if they could get an actual goal, because they were getting really close, and they just didn't seem to. They just missed the net. Over and over
Jamie,
again.
you had an audible you were going to call before
I
the
did
next
have an
question.
audible. So my audible has to deal with question number 2. It says when the question is, when all is said and done, will the recent contract from the New York Yankees gave Aaron Judge be worth it to the organization? My audible is putting Aaron Judge and Trey Turner, the both of their sons, which one is going to be more worth it at the end of their contract?
That's still an easy one. Well, Trey Turner's 30 years old, correct? I think he's 30
I think he'll be 30 at the start of the season.
So this contract, does it take him to age 41 or through age 40?
I think it's 9 years, so 39.
11 years. 11
I think it's
years.
11 years. Trey Turner was
11
11, I
years.
thought.
It's going to take
41.
him to close to age 41 or thereabouts. Aaron Judge's contract takes him to age 39 it expires, okay? And you have to look at the type of players they are. Aaron Judge is an outfielder. They could conceivably move Aaron Judge to first base at some point. Who knows where they could play that or not, but let's say he's an outfielder / DH late in his career. Trey Turner is a shortstop. At some point, he's going to lose his mobility. The last few is 11 years. Let's say after 7 years, he doesn't have the same mobility. We saw what happened to Derek Jeter, how he kind of lost it, and other guys as well. Trey Turner's not a DH type. I'm sorry. If you put him at third base, first base, he's just not the same player. He's a wonderful player now. He's going to be worth it for the first half of the contract. He's going to mean a lot to the Phillies. He's from the area. He's going to be a big crowd favorite. But he's not going – the last few years, I think Judge will be a little younger than Trey Turner. And Judge swinging the bat in itself is going to be a little more lethal. And consider this 2 packs. There's a difference between Trey Turner and Aaron Judge. Trey Turner is going to become a major – Philly fan favorite, in my opinion. Major, maybe retires one where they're going to love him in Philadelphia, but he's not quite going to be a legacy Philly like some of the other, like a handful of legacy Philly players, like a Mike Schmidt. Mike Schmidt's your ultimate legacy player for the Phillies. Trey Turner's not going to ever be in that category, ever, even though he'll be a wonderful player. Aaron Judge will be a Yankee legacy player who's going to be compared to Jeter, Mantle, Berra, so there's a difference. So the Yankee contract, I think, is going to be a little more feasible. But the Yankees are paying more money, on their contract too. But I think the Yankee contract will turn out better.
Mac, what do you think?
I agree with everything Jack just said.
And so do I. And I think I don't know if Pags is setting us up to debate. But
so I do have a second thought.
All right, so we'll give Pags the last word. But Trey Turner is a good player, a very good player. He's a star player. But and this isn't a Yankee homer talking, because I've said my fair things about Aaron Judge being hurt a lot and things like that. But Trey Turner's not Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge, as Jack alluded to at the end of this contract, and listen, WAR is a statistic, blah, 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 blah. But he has a chance to be top 5 or even top 4 in Yankee history in WAR, which would play. He has a chance to go above even Joe DiMaggio with just like WAR seasons of 3 or 4 or 5 every year from now for the rest of the contract. And that's basically what he's always done. Last year, he was a 10 WAR player. Aaron Judge is one of, if not the best player in baseball. Trey Turner is a very good shortstop. He is an excellent ball player, but he's not. It's not even in. He's not even in Judge's realm as far as being a baseball player and providing value to his team. So Trey Turner's a great player. He's going to help the Phillies win. I agree with Jack and Mac that he's going to become a legend in Philadelphia, but I don't think you can compare him to Aaron Judge. And so I think the Aaron Judge contract, assuming both players stay healthy and perform at the levels they should perform at, that I think the Aaron Judge contract will be Aaron Judge will be much more of an impactful player than Trey Turner.
So I think that, ultimately we're trying to discuss here the last 3 years of the contract, or in my case, probably the last 4 to 5 years. So what's it going to be like 6 years in? So obviously where you're saying moving him to DH or first base or third base, I see him moving to second base is where I would see Trey Turner. And then I kind of look at Trey Turner with the way his career has kind of gone and the way he accepts at bats, way he just does at bats, being more like a Paul Molitor type, where he'd be able to get on base. Speed never really goes away. And, the one loss, Art, that I find in baseball is the stolen base.
Well, that's coming back, though.
It is starting
it's going to come back because the bases next year are going to be bigger, and there's going to be rules about how many times a pitcher can throw to first base. So I think one of the and the shift being outlawed, I think you're going to see a huge uptick. And if you're going to talk about stolen bases and Trey Turner's going to steal a lot of bases, that's something he will do. That Judge can steal bases, and he does, but especially as a $40 million a year player, I don't see the Yankees having Aaron Judge stealing and sliding into second all that often. So
right.
that would be a Trey Turner advantage.
Right. And that's where I kind of believe that towards the end of his career, towards the end of this contract, speed, you slow down a little bit, but let's look at Ricky Henderson, who was obviously the best to do it. So I'm going right at the very top here when it comes to stealing bases and such like that. When I think of stealing bases, I think of Ricky Henderson. I think of Vince Coleman. I think those are the guys that initially come right off the top of my head that were able to long into the career. I feel that Trey Turner is also going to be in that mix. That he's going to be, like I said, a Paul Molitor type, where he's going to be able to hit some. As he gets older, I think the power will start to take over a little bit more. I don't think he's going to ever be a 50 home run guy. I think he'll maybe be 25, or maybe touch 30 as we get older. But my expectation is that they're both going to be good, and as they get older, like I said, 6 years into this contract, is Judge going to beat the home runs like he used to? I don't know that answer, because he's not going to have some of the same benefits that Bonds did. So
can I ask you guys this? Mickey Mantle, let's say back in the day, contracts were the same as today. The last 4 years of Mantle's career, he was a broken down player. He would hit like about 23 homers a year, something like that. But he wasn't the same player. He was just a shell of himself. But he had such value emotionally to the team, to the fan base. How do he's kind of worth the contract even at the end in a certain way. But guys like Trey Turner, Pags, they've got to do it 100% on the field. Okay, Aaron Judge could wind up being like a Giancarlo Stanton late in his career, which is still good, have these great spurts, but, not really be worth the money that they're paying him or close to it. But he'll have value to the overall organization. Trey Turner, if he's hitting 242 this year, hitting 17 homers and only being okay defensively, they're going to turn on him. I mean, it's going to be a long 11 years.
I don't think so. I think Philadelphia has short memories. And I believe that right now, for instance, we're going to find out exactly how short of memory Philadelphia has. Obviously, Nick Castellanos came here very highly revered, did not have the best season, did not have the best playoffs. If Nick Castellanos does well this year, nobody's going to remember what he did in the first year that he was with the Phillies. They're going to go back to everywhere else where he said, "Hey, it takes some people longer to transition, to go from one place to another and get themselves right." And that was the same thing with Nick, that it took him a year to do it in Cincinnati when he was traded. It took him a year to do it. I guess it was in Chicago. I don't even know, where it took him a longer time to transition. He didn't feel comfortable right away. It takes him an extra time. So
you guys lost David Robertson from your bullpen. You know, he came to the Mets, a 1 year, $10 million deal. Mac wanted him to be the closer of the Yankees. Mac was hoping the Yankees would get him.
I'm happy. I'm glad that the Mets got him. I feel that, the one thing that I am 100% positive about Robertson is he will hits. He's good. You got to use him within 25 pitches. After 25 pitches, if you get him over that 22 threshold, then you can get to him. And that we learned that. I learned that very quickly here, because he couldn't go 2 innings. He couldn't go past 22 pitches.
I think Robertson is still a very effective pitcher. He still can get the ball up into the 90s. He still got that the cutter pitch. And, the ball jumps out at you. I still think he's very effective.
Yeah, for 22 pitches.
Yeah.
That 23rd pitch is going to come in a little bit flat. And I don't, and listen, that's just being real. That's what I see. It's just, he was good up until the point where he wasn't. And you could tell that something about his arm would just get a little tired. The balls would come in a little bit flat, and, he would start to get rocked, but it was usually after 20 pitches.
Well, that gives us a nice chance to have our first commercial break. We're going to take a little break here. We'll throw some commercials up there. Hey, Pags, we need to get some new commercials into the queue. If you could put a couple in there for us. But this week we'll have a couple of the good old standbys, and we'll be back in a few moments after these wonderful commercial breaks.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, get any.
Supporting the needs of our veterans. That's the goal of all of us at Team AmVets. Like Mitch, Carlos, and Kevin from our Welcome Home team that brings furniture to our vets.
We are Team AmVets.
Or Linda from our thrift stores who brings you great bargains every day.
I am Team AmVets.
And John, who picks up your thrift store donations that support California veterans programs.
I am Team AmVets.
Visit our website or a Team AmVets thrift store to donate or shop today.
Join the team!
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Anyone else? My name is David, and in 8 years, I'll be an alcoholic.
Hi, David.
I'll start drinking in middle school, just at parties. But my parents won't start talking to me about it till high school. And by then, I'll already be in some trouble.
Kids who drink before age 15 are 5 times more likely to have alcohol problems when they're adults.
The thing is, my parents won't even see it coming.
So start talking.
Who's next?
Before they start drinking.
My baloney has a first name, it's O-S-C-A-R. My baloney has a second name, it's M-A-Y-E-R. Oh, I love to eat it every day. And if you ask me why, I'll say, 'cause Oscar Mayer has a way with B-O-L-O-G-N-A.
Oscar Mayer, the first name in Bologna.
How's that?
Mr. Green? Mr. Green?
Yeah.
You need any help?
Mm-mm.
I just want you to know, I think you're the best ever.
Yeah, sure.
Want my Coke? It's okay, you can have it.
No.
Really, you can have it.
Okay.
A Coke and a smile makes me feel good, makes me feel nice.
Be around.
That's the way it should be. I like to see
Hey, kid.
the whole world is smiling with me. Coca-Cola has life. Have a Coke and
Thanks, Mean Joe.
smile.
All right, we are back to the Mac, Jack, Doc, Pags, and everybody else debate show here on Saturday. Here is Mac. He is back. Here is Jack. Pags is on his way back. I'll take a break in a couple of moments. Jack, the original question that you asked was, how is that contract for Aaron Judge going to play out over this time, getting $40 million a year for 9 years? And so the big point that I'd love your perspective on, I'll give you mine, is I don't think it's really on Judge at this point anymore. I think it's now on the Yankees. If they use the contract as a way to keep other needs not addressed or not addressed to the level that the Yankees should address them by using the contract as a way to say, like, we can't afford other players, then it's a bad contract. But if the Yankees decide that they're going to still go out and sign the other big players and make the necessary deals, make trades that they need to do to make the team better, then I don't think it'll be a bad contract. I don't think it's really on Judge now. I think it's on how the Yankees react to that trade, to that signing. What do you think?
I think the Yankees wait too long to close deals, and they risk losing their prime players. Remember with Bernie Williams, it went down to the wire.
Did I ever tell you the Bernie Williams story?
No.
Oh, this is just kind of cute. My oldest son was about 6 years old at the time, I believe, when Bernie was going to leave. And the internet was brand new, and somehow I found a website that somehow you could talk to Bernie Williams or his own website or something. It was all in its infancy. And that night, he didn't want Bernie to go. That was his favorite player. He wrote an email to Bernie Williams that I'm sure Bernie never got. But, like, you're my favorite player. Stay a Yankee. He was 6. And the next morning, Bernie Williams signs with it's announced that he's a Yankee. So my little 6-year-old son thought that he did it.
But Bernie Williams, they waited till the last moment to finally match whatever the Red Sox were going to give him, $87.5 million, I think, for 7 years at the time or whatever. But they easily could have lost him. Like they lost Andy Pettitte to Houston when they finally were willing to pay Andy Pettitte what he would have accepted. Pettitte decided, I want to go home to Houston. That was the same thing as Judge maybe going home to San Francisco. They waited till the last moment for their top offer. Listen, they should have signed Judge 3 years ago, recognize he was a legacy player, 3 years from free agency, 2 years from free agency. Even last spring training, they could have gotten him for about $70, $80 million less than what they ultimately shelled out. And that money could have gone to, let's say, a Carlos Rondon as part of a deal to bolster their pitching staff or other needs. And some of these teams are doing it, like Atlanta, Tampa Bay. San Diego tried that with Tatis. The jury's still out to see whether it's going to be worth it or not.
Yeah,
but
Braves
that's
did it with Acuna.
Yeah, at Acuna, 10 years, $100 million. What a bargain. Are you kidding me? And because they addressed the situation a few years before one of their great players was going to become a free agent, where they could get him on the cheap, basically, at good value for a team. So, but I'm going to tell you something. This is my feeling. If I would judge, I would feel pressure to live up to the contract. Don't think just because the guy's guaranteed the money, he's not under enormous pressure. 9 years is a heck of a long time. If you're performing very poorly 3 years into the contract, you can't wait to get out of town. If all of a sudden you lose your skills, what's that play on the Orioles? Chris Davis was his name or whatever. They gave him a long-term deal. He's not an Aaron Judge, but based on one big year, something. And it's like, it's brutal for the player to keep coming out there to work every day, being booed game after game after game. I mean, we're looking at it from the outside, but that's coming to the ultimate bad work environment for the player. And to do that repeatedly, it really takes a toll on you as a human being.
Well, I agree 100%. 100%. You know, the part of, and I've said this before, and I'm not taking anything away from Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge is great. Aaron Judge had a legendary season. But I always think it's interesting when players have that great season right before their free agency, right? And the whole narrative, you know, Judge stepped up, you know, he put his money where his mouth was. He's playing for pride. He's playing, well, and he had a great season. He had 62 home runs, had one of the greatest seasons of all time. But boy, doesn't it beg the question, why couldn't he do that before? He only do it because he was trying to show it to the Yankees. And then will he do it next year? Like how great will he be? Now, I think he's going to be great. I think he's a great ball player. But if he doesn't, boy, does he allow that narrative to grow.
Can I just say one thing to you, Doc? You especially should have picked up on this. Derek Jeter had his worst year the year he was eligible to be a free agent, the last year. And that diminished his value to an extent. He hit 270, Jeter. He faded badly over the last 2 months of the season when he was a free agent. So that's not always the case.
You know, yeah, of course, there's always going to be people who defy what the traditional idea is, like exceptions to the rule. I'm saying there's a lot of players who have big years.
Reggie Jackson, 1981, had a terrible year by his standards, and he was going to be a free agent at the end of the year. And the Yankees let him go at the end of the year. They didn't re-sign him because he had a terrible free agent year as well, him and Jeter.
But 1981 was also an aberration year, right? There was the strike. They missed 44 games and so much of the season, et cetera, et cetera. Like it's hard to judge the 1981 season as a typical season.
Yeah.
So
you know, I know Pags loves talking about the Yankees, so I'll go first. Listen, Aaron Judge, I mean, he could have got a lot more money. That's the first thing I'm going to say. San Diego offered him $40 million a year or something ridiculous. So, you know, he took less money, which shows me that the pinstripes and being a Yankee still holds a lot of weight in the Major League Baseball. So he takes less money. He has a great year. He wins all these awards, and still. I think he's gonna. I don't think he's gonna have as good a year as he did this year, next year. But that's gonna happen. It's gonna go up and down. So I think the Yankees made the right decision, even though I was in the beginning. I was very. What's the word I'm looking for? I was very
leery,
upset with him because he said he wanted to be a Yankee and yet he was going to go somewhere else. So so I admit I was wrong. And, I'm happy that Aaron Judge.
At least you admit it, Mac. Doc hasn't admitted. I told you and Doc I would call you guys out on this at the end. Last year, when they turned down the 213.5. Mac, to his credit, admits he was in error on reflection, knowing what the free agent market is, but Doc is dug in. Doc will not
again, I wouldn't have signed him 3 years ago to a long-term extension. He had been hurt all the time at that point. It's easy to look back in retrospect and say, see, he wasn't hurt the last 2 years, and look how great he was. Yeah, you're right. Sometimes you take a chance and you're wrong. But the Yankees also signed Luis Severino to a big contract when he was young, like these other teams have done. People forget about that, and he was hurt, and he's been hurt for most of that contract.
They didn't sign him for big money, and the Yankees picked up his option this year as part of that contract.
Correct, but the Yankees haven't gotten their money's worth out of that contract. And another player they tried to do that with was Aaron Hicks. Again, for bigger money at the time. They wanted to lock him up long term. So they said he's coming off a good year. We project him to be really good for the next 5 years, whatever it was. And they signed him, and he has not performed, obviously.
Judge is a legacy player. You can't.
But 3 years ago, he wasn't a legacy player. Three years ago, he had a great rookie year, and then he had a number of years where he was injured.
He was trending towards that. He got hit by a pitch in the hand, and that's what's one of the reasons one of the years he was out. I didn't think it was an issue last spring, and he proved it. Look how he took the field game after game, even late in the season. And with that said, for all we know, Aaron Judge will get injured early next year, and then people are going to question the contract. I mean, it's a long deal for a lot of money. And again, I can't. This is a discussion for another time. I still don't understand the modern ball player compared to the guys from decades ago who never got hurt. Willie Mays, no one hustled harder than Willie Mays around the bases. He never pulled his hammy. You know, Roberto Clemente didn't pull hamstrings, but all the guys today, it seems, can't stay on the field compared to the guys of the past. I don't get it, Mac. You mentioned you think they overtrain.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I mean, Doc's active marathon running. I mean,
if your whole regimen consists of lifting weights and you know of that of heavy lifting, of course you're going to pull something. Your legs are tight. The muscles are very tight. And you're going to pull, and when you run around the bases or you make quick moves, of course you're gonna pull ligaments and such. So they definitely overtrain. There's no doubt about that.
And we do remember the players, and we use them as examples who don't get hurt. Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, or whatever. But baseball history is littered with ball players who did get hurt. And we just don't remember who they were. Mickey Mantle was hurt. Joe DiMaggio missed a lot of time in his career on and off for a number of injuries, the famous heel spur injury. So, I mean, there were great players. Babe Ruth had a bellyache in 1925 that shocked the world, etc. We don't know if it was a bellyache or not. But the point is they missed time.
But Mantle got hurt hitting a sprinkler, right? I mean, in outfield, that wasn't an injury because he was cutting.
Yeah, that's because he's injury prone.
No, but after that, he missed time in 61. He was in the chase. It's 10 years later now. He got hurt in 51 in the World Series with the sprinkler. And then in 61, he got hurt late in the year and had to bow out of the.
He got a faulty flu shot or something. You know, he had an infection and they gave him a bad shot.
My point is, we remember the players when we make arguments like that. Remember the guys who played every game, but then we tend not to remember the guys who missed a lot of time. Because there were a lot of guys who missed a lot of time and who were injured. All right, so we're going to go to football. I'm going to throw out two questions, then I'm going to bow out for a moment or two. Both of them having to do with
before. I'm sorry.
Go.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wanted to jump in real fast.
Go. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the fact? What are your thoughts on the fact that San Diego made plays and lost players that they offered more money to?
Like Trey Turner and Aaron Judge.
Both offered significant more money, and both got.
Well, Turner loves Philadelphia. His wife is from Philadelphia. It was a lifestyle thing. The Phillies offered Turner 11 years, $300 million, and San Diego, from what I understand, went up to 341, like 31 million a year as opposed to 27 something. That's significant money that he was leaving on the table. But it gets to a point with some guys, 300 million, they're looking 41 million more after taxes, and they're thinking to themselves, this is 11 years out of my life. It's an extra 24 million or so after taxes, major money. But when you're going to be making after taxes 160 million anyway, and you could invest it, it becomes kind of like a lifestyle thing. The guy that gets me, Pags, is Jose Ramirez, the Indians wanting to stay in his hometown. His agent kept begging him not to sign the deal for 7 years, 141 million, but he came up through the Indian system. His daughter goes to school there. He loves Cleveland, absolutely loves it. And his agent knows he could have gotten in the $30 million range for 7 years as opposed to the, $20 million a year that he signed for. But, some guys, the money really, while important, they do figure, how much money do I really need after a while? Look at Robinson Cano. He was offered 7 years, 175 million by the Yankees, but he took the 10 years, 240 million. He's no longer a legacy Yankee. He would have probably been a legacy Yankee, Perhaps he would have been a legacy Yankee had he taken it. He certainly would have been in Monument Park. But, Trey Turner's going to work out. That's going to be especially if the Phillies win one World Series, that Trey Turner contract is absolutely going to be worth it with one World Series win. And he's the type of player who'll give you 7-8 good years out of those 11. So, the Phillies can be happy with that signing. I know you're a little miffed losing out on DeGrom.
Actually, when they said that he signed for 5 years, I was like, okay, that's good for him. You know what I mean? He's not going to be worth it in 3 years. So, and I think that the Mets spent ridiculous money. They didn't really do well with the money that they spent. So I find it very it's going to be a very interesting year moving forward.
Let me just talk to the San Diego thing. It's ironic because when free agency was really starting to blow up and I was a kid, there was a point in time when it looked like they were going to get every great player. In the early 80s, they got Gossage, they got Nettles, they got Steve Garvey. And everybody said no one can compete with San Diego because it's the best place to play, the nicest climate and things like that. Now, again, they lost out on Trey Turner, who wanted to go to Philly. They lost out on Aaron Judge, who wanted to stay home. And then they signed Xander Bogaerts. So, I don't know. I just think, you're going to lose out on certain players. I think the bigger question is San Francisco, who keeps trying to get a big player. They lost out on Bryce Harper. They lost out on Aaron Judge. They keep coming up short. So, but again, there's reasons for all these signings and things like that. And that's part of what it's all about.
Doc, there's Yankee bias. I'm going to give you a case in point. George Steinbrenner, when he signed all these free agents, the Yankees would get criticized all the time. Criticized that they're buying championships. They're trying to buy the pennant. Well, what's Steve Cohen doing? Because Steve Cohen's perceived as a nice guy. He's spending money on the same level as Steinbrenner.
Even more.
San Diego as well. The Dodgers as well. Right. I mean, I wonder if
Jack.
Yeah,
I agree with you 100%. And it's one of the things that I think the Yankees went through a period, and they might still be in that period, what time will tell, where they didn't want to be the team that was accused of buying World Series. What's the purpose of being a team, especially a big market team? The idea is to buy the best players and win. It seemed like there was a period where the Yankees would rather not win so that people couldn't say that they didn't buy the World Series. And if I'm the Yankees, I spend as much as necessary to get the best players in there to keep winning World Series. And if you want to say we bought the World Series, okay, but we did win the World Series. So, and the Phillies, they've spent big money on big time players. So it's just silly. It's a double standard. I agree.
But the Phillies haven't gone crazy overboard. I mean, they've stood within a high end structure, but they haven't been, off the wall. They haven't gone to the limits of Steve Cohen. with the Scherzer contract. They've been somewhat like
They
under
got
that.
Turner now. They got Bryce Harper, right? They've spent big
But
time.
they
on
gave,
some-
it was a reasonable
And they
deal.
are rumored. They are rumored with Beckett. They are rumored to get Beckett, so it'll be interesting to see if they do that and how much money they spend. Because it's been rumored that they're going to jump over that threshold.
I don't know the
Beckett,
player you said.
the pitcher.
Beckett?
Which player?
Beckett. Hold on,
Beckett?
let me look it up so I can.
Wait.
Yeah, Andrew
Yeah, I
Beckett.
know Josh Beckett's long retired.
Josh-
So you wouldn't about him.
Yeah, like I said,
mean,
they were talking about
Carlos
it yesterday.
Correa, a play for
So let
Carlos
me-
Correa.
As we try to figure out the player,
I'm looking it up now.
the
That
next
they have
question.
that they've been linked about getting the pitcher.
Carlos Rondon.
All right. No. This guy was, he's a current pitcher now. So.
Okay, well, he's not high end. I mean,
Rondon is. He's had 2 great years. He's the guy I want the Yankees.
Yeah.
I want the Yankees to get absolutely, positively, 100%. And I think that's the type of guy that's going to say whether the Yankees are all in, or if they're just going to sign Judge to a big contract and then try to fill around him.
Well,
with
the
more
Yankees
budgetary
made
pieces.
another. The Yankees made another signing that I know that could have the biggest effect of all. Actually, it's funny. Brian Cashman.
They brought back Brian Cashman. Yep.
Bassett.
Yes.
Bassett.
Oh, Chris Bassett. Good pitcher, but not worth the truly big bucks. But look, the Yankees lost Jameson Talon to the Cubs.
Yep.
4 years, $68 million, $17 million a year. I think that's a little high for a pitcher his caliber.
I do too. He's a strictly average pitcher. Nice guy, good pitcher, but yeah, I don't think he had a role on the Yankees.
3
going
years,
forward.
$13 million a year. That's as high as I would have gone if I were the Yankees. Maybe that's what I would have taken a chance on.
So let's go back to football. You guys can sit around and talk about these 2 questions because they're very similar. Baker Mayfield, he is now going to the Los Angeles Rams. And the question is, can he revive his career with the Los Angeles Rams? There's another quarterback named Zach Wilson. And the question is, will he be the quarterback of the Jets when the season starts next year?
Well,
So
Doc, Baker's already playing with the Rams and already had a big game. So
That the question was given in right before the game. No one could see what Baker did coming. If you have to duck out, Doc, it's okay. Well,
all right. So, but the question is, look, players have big games, right? Melky Cabrera once hit for the cycle or whatever. Like anybody could have a big game. The question is Baker Mayfield going to stay at the top of his game now with the Rams? And will Zach Wilson be the quarterback on the Jets? And I'll be back in just a few moments.
Just on Baker Mayfield, the question, as I said, was given in before the game with the Rams. I couldn't see that coming because, especially a quarterback, you come to a new team with all the complicated defenses, and to do what he did, it was phenomenal what Baker Mayfield did. And they announced he's going to be their quarterback the rest of the season. That's the plan for him to start. So he, in a sense, he's at least temporarily revived his career with that big game, that big comeback against the Raiders. And we'll see what he does the rest of the year. If he plays well, decently, yeah, I mean, he has a job in the NFL. Teams are going to want him, if not as a start, as a primary backup. Compare that to how it looked when Carolina cut him. The Rams were the only team to claim him off waivers. Now, if Baker Mayfield wound up being on waivers, a number of teams would claim him. And also, it's the image of Baker Mayfield. He has an image of being high-strung, maybe difficult to deal with. He had that at Cleveland. He went to Carolina. At least he got along with the players, the coaching staff. If he gets along with the players and coaching staff at the Rams, even if he doesn't stick with the Rams for next year, he would have at least added to his image. Yeah, I think he revived his career, absolutely. with that game last Thursday. He created a sports buzz. For one night, he was like not counting the Brittany Griner story, which wasn't directly sports related. He was the biggest story in sports for one night, Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Jack. I think Baker might revive his career with the Rams, depending, if the Rams play really good or not this year. Do they make the playoffs? Probably not.
No,
I think they're almost eliminated now.
Yeah,
right.
they're out of it, man.
Right.
Yeah.
And do they continue to get better? Does Baker play better with you got a whole new team coming back next year. You got Kupp coming back. You got some weapons Baker can throw to. So, maybe that will help Baker too. I think Matt Stafford is done. I think the spinal injury, his last injury, I think he's going to retire from football. I'd be surprised if he sticks around, Jamie.
I almost would agree there. I think he's getting old. I think that if anything, if he stays around next year, it'll be more to be the backup and to carry the clipboard for Baker.
No, not Matthew Stafford. Are you kidding me, Pat?
Well, you know what? Some people just don't know how to stop. I think absolutely he would be a backup because for Baker. And
come on.
Not because he feels that just some people are he would fulfill his contract is what he would be doing. And I think that, you're right. I don't think he wants to get hurt. I think that he would mentor and then he would also learn how to become a coach. And
that's what I was going to say.
And start to get that type of experience by carrying the clipboard. He'd be able to do that and get paid as a player.
Maybe a quarterback coach for the Rams, right?
Right. But again,
what? Come on. You don't go from a star quarterback to becoming a quarterback coach. How do you know he even wants to coach, whether he has the slightest interest in it? And you're assuming that Baker Mayfield is going to be the Rams starter and Stafford is going to be on the active list but holding a clipboard? Give me a break. If Stafford is healthy enough to play, he's going to be the starting quarterback. And as a backup, if he's so scared about getting injured, he could get in a game at any time.
Stafford is not coming back. He's done. He's all done. That spinal injury, it may ruin his life. What happens if he gets paralyzed? I mean, there's so many things that could happen.
I don't know the extent of his injury. From what I understand, he could have played this year if they absolutely needed him, if they were in contention, that he could have maybe been on the field. I mean, because it's touch and go, because the Rams are how they are. It's kind of like they're shutting him down for next year. So they anticipate him playing. That's the thought.
Yeah.
If it was a spinal thing and he couldn't play, he would be on the injured reserve. I mean, they did put him on it. I don't mean it that way, but there wouldn't have been debate whether he could play or not.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be. That's just my personal opinion. I don't think he'll be.
And I think that being said, I think that, Baker's not a bad quarterback. I think that he has you went from a bad situation to another bad situation. I feel like that the Rams are also another bad situation, but are a little better. They have some talent that he would be able to start to gel with and start to really connect with. I think that they beat a bad Raiders team. You know what I mean? So they didn't beat anybody special. If there was going to be anybody that you could go up against, the Raiders were the perfect, team to do that against. And ultimately, I feel that he may have a little resurgence. I don't know if it's going to revive his career, but it's possible that he could lead that Rams team next year to a playoff run. They are a Super Bowl contender, but they could definitely be on a playoff trajectory with Baker at the helm. And the rest of the people that they have there having good seasons. You know, like again, you got Cooper Kupp there. You do have a good running back over there, although he didn't have a good season this year. So there are definitely weapons that Baker could utilize. And ultimately, I got to imagine that flip-flopping from team to team in just a year's time has got to humble somebody, you know, and maybe that's what he needed. He needed to be humbled a little bit. And ultimately, I think that he's going to have, like I said, a resurgence, a revival.
Yeah, you know, I think there's a lot of good quarterbacks out there right now that could play for the Rams next year too, that can compete with Baker Mayfield for that starting job. You know, quarterbacks that are just the same as him, field generals that aren't exciting. So, you know, I don't know what's going to happen with the Rams next year, guys.
Yeah, I actually put them as a dark horse to possibly land Rodgers. Money would be the funny thing about that.
Yeah.
How do you fit him under the cap? But that would be something that wouldn't surprise me at all.
And with Zach Wilson, the Jets are not going to give up on him. What is going to happen? Let's say the Jets make the playoff. Mike White plays pretty well, and they get eliminated, the Jets, in the first game. Let's compromise on that scenario. They go to training camp. I think there's going to be a competition for the job between Mike White and Zach Wilson because Wilson was drafted so high. I don't think the coaching staff is going to be bold enough to say Zach is our quarterback. And they're also not going to give up on Zach Wilson because he was drafted so highly. It makes the GM look bad. So they'll have a quarterback competition there, and we'll see who looks better, you know, at that point. But I would think opening the season next year, if Mike White takes him to the playoffs, he's going to start. But it's going to be a case if Mike White stumbles at all at some point, Zach Wilson is waiting in the wings to be brought in immediately to see what he could do, because the fan base could live with that. If Mike White is struggling a bit, it's kind of what happened with you at Philadelphia. Minshew's in the background. If Jalen Hurts was struggling, the fan base wouldn't have gotten upset if Minshew was brought in to see what he could do. You know, that's always the case. You know, sometimes it's better for a guy like Zach Wilson not to be made the starter because everyone's ready to pounce on him if he doesn't produce. But if you're coming in for someone who's not producing, that takes a lot of pressure off of you.
I don't think Zach Wilson will be there next year, Jack. I think he's all done in New York. I think that he'll end up on a team that either needs a young quarterback or on a real good team where he can learn something from a veteran, how to read defenses, how to make audible calls, how to learn how to play football correctly. So I don't even think Zach Wilson will be there next year.
They invested too much in him, Mac. That's the problem.
That's true.
If
That's
they didn't invest the second overall pick in the draft, I agree with you, he'd be gone. If he was like a fourth-round draft choice, he'd be gone next year for sure. Okay, maybe even cut this year. But because of the investment, it makes them really look bad, the Jets. So they're hoping they could salvage it. But you're not wrong. Under normal circumstances, you'd be correct.
That's a good point, Jack.
You know, Jamie brought up an interesting name, Aaron Rodgers. A number of years ago, the Jets brought in Brett Favre, right? Is Aaron Rodgers a option, do you believe, for the Jets next year?
Would he want to play in New York? I mean, it would be.
Well, let's assume he would. Let's assume he would want to play. Is that an option for the Jets? Is that something that would be smart for the Jets to do?
I guess. I mean, you're going to talk a huge salary they would have to pay. You're going to talk again. You say he wants to play there, but he probably doesn't. He's got, does his girlfriend want to go to New York? I mean, there's so many different possibilities, Doc.
Does he have a girlfriend? He was seen at courtside at the Milwaukee Buck game with the Bucks owner's daughter. So I don't think Aaron has a girlfriend. I mean,
maybe that's his new girlfriend. I don't know, Jack. But
one thing about Aaron Rodgers, I think Pags got to him because I saw Aaron Rodgers commenting on the Philadelphia fans, and a picture of you, Pags, in uniform. That's true, Doc. As Aaron Rodgers is talking, you see Pags in his football uniform raring to go. So, he was complimentary in a way towards the Eagle fans, meaning you were getting inside his head. And he was trying not to let anyone know that.
Yeah, he was. I mean, and that story was a couple of years old. Actually, it's that picture. That picture was from the Pat McAfee show from 2 years ago, and it got more play this year than it did last year. Ultimately, when we played Green Bay, I think they beat us last year or something like that. But actually, no. Jalen Hurts beat him 2 years ago. So, but it literally, that picture came out then, but it made a big resurgence this year because he said that a couple years ago. But it was a game in Philadelphia where Aaron Rodgers was playing, where somebody ran onto the field with the ashes from their mother and put it there at on the Eagle in center, on the 50-yard line, the ashes of his mother. So it was, and of course he got to see that, and that guy became very iconic because of that. And it was, a very unique type of situation, but he happened to be privy about that. And then he was very complimentary about how unique our banter is. So that we are very good with being able to go back and forth, as LeBron James and Russell Westbrook heard about yesterday.
There you go.
All right, so let's move on to a whole different realm. These questions, of course, Jack gives them to us a couple of days before the show, and Jack, I have to take a moment here just to compliment you because, I mean, week after week to come up with all these different topics and great things for us to talk about. It's amazing. And here's a really good one. Who is the most iconic woman in sports history? The most famous female athlete? And I'll go last. So let's hear you guys banter about it. Who do you think is the most famous female athlete of all time?
Well, I'll take this one first. Of course, you probably would have to say Serena Williams but I'm going to go with Billie Jean King. I mean, she was, she was the whole beginning of the females playing males in tennis in the 70s. She was part of that women's movement. She played Bobby Riggs, who at the time was a real good tennis player, and beat him, even though maybe Bobby Riggs did rig it. I don't know. Maybe he did let her win just for the heck of it. I don't know. But I'll go with Billie Jean King. I think she's still at matches today. She still discusses tennis today. So that'll be my pick.
Max said it for me. I don't have much to add to it. Max, I go along with everything Max said. The only thing I'll say with Billie Jean King, the reason why she's the most famous, because when people want to point to equality between men and women in sports, they point to Billie Jean King. I mean, the fact she beat Bobby Riggs, she did, but she was much younger than he was. She wouldn't have beaten an elite male. I mean, if you put her against the John McEnroe, the two of them at their best, for example, it would have been an utter mismatch. But even like women's running, I remember reading in TV Guide, and Joan Benoit Samuelson won the first Olympic women's marathon with a time of 2 hours, 24 minutes, and 52 seconds. And TV Guide wrote, very few males would have been able to match that. And I'm thinking, wait a second. You needed a 2:21 and change to just make it to the Olympic trials for men. She would have been 3 minutes off making it to the men's Olympic trials. But with that said, Billie Jean's truly iconic. I mean, we prorate things. The top women athletes aren't going to be able to compete against the top men head to head, but they could give us better value. They could be more entertaining. I could watch.
I'll tell you what, here's a picture of Billie Jean King being entertaining. Talk about iconic. This is
Wow.
the famous TV show, The Odd Couple. There's Bobby Riggs and there's Billie Jean King, and they're playing table tennis as the highlight of one of the great episodes of all time on one of TV's most iconic TV shows. So
Billie Jean King is a very classy individual. The way she conducts herself, the way she speaks, she is very complimentary of Bobby Riggs. But after the match, in the years after that, she said Bobby Riggs was one of her idols, and she didn't take any cheap shots at Bobby Riggs in any way, shape, or form. She understood that to Bobby Riggs, it was all a big game, their match. But she knew what was on the line. Imagine the pressure that she was under. And what made Billie Jean so iconic too, Bobby Riggs easily defeated Margaret Court, who was supposed to be a gentle step ahead of Billie Jean King right before that. That's what set up the King-Riggs match. And by Billie Jean winning that match, that was good for society. Because I don't want to think how people would have perceived things if Bobby Riggs won, because some of these chauvinists would have taken it as a chance to put, women down or women's sports down. And it was a good thing. As a man, I'm happy that Billie Jean won that match.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Pags, you have a famous, most iconic female sports figure of all time that's different than Billie Jean King.
So when I think of like iconic, the first name that comes to my mind, and it's maybe because I'm not as old as the birthday boy and the
He's only
historian
26.
down below me, but is like Mary Lou Retton. I know that we immediately start to think of tennis when we think of women. But I think of Nadia Comaneci, and then I think of Mary Lou Retton and even Brandy Chastain. Those are like names that aren't necessarily like Mary Lou Retton definitely was a name, was a household name back then. Is it as iconic as Billie Jean King? Probably not, because of what Billie Jean stood for at the time of the match that had happened, and it created the buzz that that women could compete with men and such like that. I mean, I'll be 100% honest. Obviously, you guys know I have a little bit of an arm wrestling background. You could get some of the women arm wrestlers going up against any guy in just about any bar, and you'd watch that woman beat every guy. So there's definitely arenas where women can compete with men, and it be a level playing field in any which way. But that being said, when I think of iconic, me personally, I do think of like Mary Lou Retton and Nadia Comaneci and things like that. Like Mary Lou Retton.
I think that's great. I think that's great, Pags. I mean, and on one leg too, right? I mean, she had that hurt leg and she did that vault and won it. So I mean, that's a good one. How about Dorothy Hamill, guys?
Oh, wait a minute. Wait, look.
She was like my very first crush. Like 9 years old. When
we were kids, every single girl got a Dorothy Hamill haircut. I mean, you talk about iconic. She was the trendsetter. She wasn't just a great ice skater. I mean,
I remember going to see her at the Ice Capades.
Yes,
that's what it was called.
Anybody.
So I mean, I like to think outside of tennis. It's when you think of women now. Obviously Serena Williams. And I think Serena gets a lot of the. Serena was an amazing player. So don't let what I'm about to say, mix this. But I think that she also inherited some of Venus's accolades. They both were sisters, so they were both able to elevate each other. Because of that, I know Serena was great on her own. I think that she was better because her sister was great as well. But like I said, I think that there's so many other sports beyond tennis. I try to think of a woman golfer, and I think of what was her name, Wu or
Nancy
Lee or
Wright?
something like that. I don't know of the newer golfers now, but I just thought of there was that one golfer for a short time who was being compared to Tiger Woods on the women's side. So there's lots of different women out there that have been amazing athletes throughout their career that didn't just play tennis.
Guys, but it's more than being an athlete. I'll give you an example in tennis. John McEnroe, Jimmy Connors, they were greater players than Arthur Ashe, but Arthur Ashe is more iconic for what he meant socially, to the sport worldwide. Now, with our big three, you're talking about Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, Djokovic. Those guys are so great in their sport. They rise iconically because they're generational talents. But Billie Jean King, what she meant outside of the arena, obviously Serena Williams was a greater athlete and all. But but Billie Jean, there was no one quite like her for what she meant socially and what she meant for the women's cause.
How about, I'll throw two other names out there. One who's really forgotten today, but Babe Dickerson, who was a phenomenal athlete in tennis and in golf. She played a lot of major sports, and she actually proved way back in the 30s and 40s, I believe, that women could excel at various sports. And she was really a terrific athlete. And earlier we were also talking about the 1960 Olympics. How about Wilma Rudolph and what she did and how she overcame, I believe she had polio as a young child. And there was, she had to really learn how to walk all over again. And she walked with braces for a number of years and then really trains and works so hard that she becomes a multi-time and multi-Olympics champion time and time again.
Doc, a funny story, Wilma Rudolph, 1960 Olympics, Cassius Clay had a crush on her. Would be asking her out, but he heard she was a runner, and he had a great sense of humor, Ali. He kept challenging her to a race, He wasn't a runner. He ran well. He was a good runner at the time, Ali, but not a track person. He challenged her to a race, and she actually beat him, edged him out.
Nice.
He was, no girl could beat me. He's gone on and on and on.
Let me give you a couple more. Let me give you a couple more before we move on. I would think if you would say women's basketball, you might think of Rebecca Lobo, who was was an unbelievable player for UConn, and of course Pele. I mean, who was bigger than Pele in the world than Pele at one time?
Pele is a man.
Yeah, no, I'm saying if you wanted to, I'm just saying if you wanted to talk about a icon.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm talking about what they meant socially. Like if I mention today, no matter how you feel about her case, at this hour, Brittany Griner is the most iconic woman in sports at this hour because of what's going on in the news and being a great basketball player on top of it, but what's has gone on worldwide. I'm talking about iconic, how you look at somebody, as
for all the wrong reasons, Jack. If she's an iconic, it's for all the wrong reasons. I mean, what she did, the way she.
Well, we were not getting into the case, The soccer team with Mia Hamm. At that moment, you could say for a short window, Mia Hamm was the most iconic woman, maybe for a short period of time. You can make that.
Could you say it about Danica Patrick? Would you call her an athlete?
Yeah.
Yeah, but historically, but if we're talking throughout the history of women's sports, not for like a current time frame overall, I can't see anyone passing Billie Jean. I know Martina was a better player than she was. I know Serena Williams certainly was more accomplished.
Yeah, and let's not forget about Chrissy Everett-Lloyd.
She was my favorite.
Yeah, she wasn't as good as Martina, Steffi Graf, Monica Seles, and all. Yeah.
All right, I think we have time for at least one more question. And so we'll go back to baseball. I think for me, this is a very simple answer, but last week we had the various veteran committee. They keep changing the titles of them, but whatever the committee is called now, vote on Hall of Fame. And Barry Bonds was on the ballot. He didn't get in. And so the question then proposed here is, at this point, it seems like a long shot for either Barry Bonds or Pete Rose to get into the Hall of Fame. But if you had to pick one or the other, which do you think gets in first? Is it Barry Bonds or is it Pete Rose? What do you think?
Guys,
I'm going to start this one off.
You started off, yeah.
I think it's going to be Pete Rose. And the reason why I think it's going to be Pete Rose is because he's going to die. And he's going to get put in posthumously. I think that that's what they're waiting for. I think that they do not want to give him any of the accolades while he's alive. I think that he's going to absolutely make it into the Hall of Fame. And once he does, that's when you'll start to see Bonds and everybody else. It's almost like they'll start a new wing of the undesirable Hall of Famers, and they'll all start to come in at once. But I think it's going to be Pete Rose, and I think it's just because of the fact that he's going to die soon. You know, and I say soon, I can say within the next 10 years. And then the moment that he's gone, they'll put him in the Hall of Fame.
Pads, but Shoeless Joe Jackson was never put in. So
and you'll see he'll also be put in. Like I said, you're going to see a bunch of the undesirables that they're going to have. It's almost like they'll have their own wing of the Hall of Fame. So all of these people, you have to include them. You have to include them. These guys have been amazing baseball players. And say what you want or have whatever feeling you want. Baseball allowed everything that happened before Bonds. It was like, then we gotta do that. But baseball wanted it to be that. So McGwire, Sosa, all of those guys that wound up doing, all those types of steroids are all going to get in. But it's going to happen after Pete Rose gets in posthumously.
Could you imagine?
Then also Shoeless Joe Jackson, I'd be willing to bet, also gets in.
Tags, could you imagine they have the undesirable wing in Cooperstown? That would be the most attended wing in the museum, the undesirable wing. But Pags, I agree with you on Pete Rose. It's a long shot for both. But Bonds is not getting in ever for this. I mean, maybe, who knows, 50, 60 years down the road. Who knows what the heck's going to happen. But Bonds is nowhere even on the radar. He only got 4 votes out of 16, and this is a special committee. He needs 12 votes. He's not anywhere close. I mean, Don Mattingly and Curt Schilling are going to get in ahead of Bonds. As far as Rose goes, it's interesting. If he was made eligible to be on the ballot, which ballot would he be on? Would they put him on the ballot with the players? Would they put him on with the special committee? I think these guys take things personal. If Pete Rose winds up on the ballot, he did play the game the right way. How can you not vote for him? Yet there would be people who wouldn't vote for him because they think he was a real jerk. And they'd also think, well, the point is he, bet on baseball. So I'm never going to vote for him no matter what. So I think it's a long shot. But I think the door's a little bit open for Pete Rose if they make him eligible. I don't think that door's open for Bonds at all.
Wow.
I
think go Mac.
I think we're forgetting some of the most important parts of Pete Rose. First of all-time hit leader. What is it, 4,700 and something hits? I mean, no one's ever going to
4,132.
Everyone knows how great he was. No one is.
2 MVP, 2 World Series. He brought his team to 2 World Series, 2 different teams, if I'm not mistaken. So I know people know that, Jack. I'm just saying that, let's not forget the contribution that Pete Rose made to these teams and his awards and his records. I mean, he cheated, but everybody in the history of baseball almost has cheated. So
Well, Pete Rose was the most popular player in baseball for a while when he played. No one was more popular than Charlie Hustle.
yes,
But that was then and this is now. He's no longer popular because of his personality. He lied for years and things have come out about him. He's not the popular guy he once was. He's not admired anymore.
Wow. I'm going to I'm going to disagree with all three of you on this. I think Barry Bonds gets in years ahead of Pete Rose. And I think it's because baseball has not allowed Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson in because it cannot ever do anything that's going to even give a tiny bit of belief that it's saying that gambling on games when you're involved in the games or managing the games has any place in the game whatsoever. And because of that, that was a rule that was in every locker room. It's on every locker room wall. You cannot gamble on these games. Now, Pags made a good point. He said baseball gave a little wink and a nod to all the guys who used performance-enhancing drugs, and it wasn't even outlawed for years after some of these guys had used them. And we've already seen certain players who have the hint or the question of steroids around them get into the Hall of Fame. We've seen managers who managed the steroid guys get in the Hall of Fame. We've seen the commissioner of that whole era get in the Hall of Fame. And I just think it's a matter of time before there's enough people on the committee who'd say, you know what, he was part of the game. That you're going to see like A-Rod get in one of these years and through the writers. And once he gets in, he's been suspended for steroids. So if you let A-Rod in, how do you keep Bonds and Clemens and those other guys out? So I think the steroids is going to be much more accepted than gambling. Absolutely, positively. So I don't see Pete Rose getting in for a very, very, very long time. And I think the steroid guys will get in before he does.
Doc, the math is simple, though. There's a 16-person committee now.
Which changes. Doesn't matter. It's going to be a different 16 people next time. It's never the same guys.
But they're
no, in fact, and even the groups change. So like next year, I think the group is 22. So it's all different associations that get the ability to vote on this. I didn't think it was the same group over and over again.
Well, this is where I think Rose has the advantage. Now, you say gambling is in no part of baseball or something similar to that, but gambling is in baseball right now, Doc. They are gambling on the games right now.
But the players and the coaches and the managers aren't. And I think that's the firm line that baseball can't accept.
I don't know. I don't know if maybe they're placing bets through friends. Who knows what they're doing? All I'm saying is that with the gambling, to me, that now you're talking puts it in favor of Pete Rose because there is gambling, and gambling is not a big deal anymore, Doc.
Do you know?
I think the gambling part is going to be normalized enough.
Let me tell you, I think if you're going to have a sport, any sport where you say it's okay for the participants in the contest, the professionals, to gamble and to be part of that gambling culture, I think sports is walking a very scary line with it anyway, with all the betting apps and all that kind of stuff. But the minute you say it's okay for the referees or the players or the coaches to be involved in the gambling, that's the exact moment that you delegitimize the integrity of the sport, and the sport will go downhill.
Doc, there's gambling. It's called bonus clauses. That's the same thing. The knock on Pete Rose was, well, if you bet on your team, you might make some moves during the game that you wouldn't normally make that could jeopardize your team in the long run because you want to win that game bad enough. Let's say a guy has a bonus clause. Let's take it to the NFL with Matt Ryan. They weren't playing him early in the year because they didn't want to pay out bonuses, reportedly, the Colts on that. But let's say a guy needs a few more at-bats to reach a milestone, and the manager might not play him. The team might not play him. They might not want him to reach the bonus because he's not a popular guy. And there are different ways that affect the game with these bonus clauses, the same way as you would if you bet on your team.
I think in baseball, and that's what we're talking about specifically, I don't think there are very many bonus clauses that in the last numbers of years, because of the fact that those clauses could be manipulated by a manager or things like that. I think sometimes there's things in there about if you win the MVP, but that's out of a manager's hands. But I think with most of these contracts, you don't really see any of that in there. And I don't equate a bonus clause in a contract in any way, shape, or form to a manager or a player gambling on his team to win or lose at any moment. I just think it's much too hard of a line that cannot be crossed. Now, does Pete Rose belong in the Hall of Fame as a player? Absolutely. He won all those years with the Reds. He went to the Phillies, helped them win, all-time hits leader, iconic figure. Are you going to put on this plaque that he was suspended for gambling? Sure, I would put that on his plaque, but I don't think I think that's a hard line that's not going to be crossed. I can't see that being. I can't see Pete Rose getting in the Hall of Fame.
I don't know, Doc. I don't know.
Well, the whole idea is to do everything you can to win every game. If that's your mindset, then Pete Rose did nothing wrong because he bet on his teams. He did everything he could to win that game. I mean, I don't agree with it. You have to think of the big picture with your team. You don't want to pitch pitchers on short rest, but that's the mindset. Look, Billy Martin burned out arms when he was with Oakland because he tried to win every game.
Right. But he wasn't. I don't think anybody's ever said that Billy Martin gambled on his team and did that.
No, he made a mistake, Pete Rose. I mean, how much you're going to punish? There's a difference between betting against your team and betting on your team.
The truth of the matter is, but let's go backwards a little bit. Giamatti, when he was the commissioner, the reason why he gave him a lifetime ban wasn't because of the gambling, was because of the lying about it.
Right.
Yeah.
That he lied about it all that time.
Right.
The gambling would have been somewhat excusable had he been truthful about it. But because he lied about it is the reason why he was given that lifetime ban. Now, everybody has been respectful. So I think that that's exactly what's going to happen. They're giving him the lifetime ban. So when he's dead, they're going to put him in.
I don't think they're thinking that way.
I think they are. I think they are very specifically. They're using that line in the sand.
Pete Rose had a meeting with Rob Manfred years ago. Manfred wanted to see whether he reconfigured his life. Apparently he hadn't. Pete Rose, let's face it, I mean, he doesn't, on the surface, at least I don't know him from what I could see. I wouldn't say he's a really good guy. And I think that fact
He's a jerk. He's a jerk.
Yeah, okay.
But
since
when have we kept people out of the Hall of Fame for being bad guys?
Well, you keep them out of the Hall of Fame for when they do other things along with being bad guys.
I think there is no reason Pete Rose should not be in the Hall of Fame right now, guys. I really don't.
He is in the, well, you want to know something? He's in the Cincinnati Red Hall of Fame. Look at the hypocrisy. If he's banned from gambling, why did they allow him, Major League Baseball, to be inducted into the Cincinnati Red Hall of Fame?
Because the Cincinnati Red Hall of Fame isn't run by baseball. It's a different organization.
He's
run by the Reds.
He's also all over. Pete Rose is all over the Hall of Fame. He's just not personally in it. He's got cleats in there. He's got batting gloves. He's got a bat in there. Like there's number of stuff of Pete Rose's that is in the Hall of Fame. Just him personally is not. And like I said, that's where I feel that
there's two things. There's the Hall of Fame, which is where you have the awards, the plaques of the greatest players of all time, the players who've been into the Hall of Fame. And then you have the museum where they have artifacts from the history of the game. And he's in there. So is Barry Bonds. So is Roger Clemens. So is a whole lot of guys.
Yeah.
They're in the museum because they're part of baseball history, but they haven't been elected into the Hall of Fame as Hall of Fame members, people who are recognized as the greatest of the sport, which then gets into that question. He was one of the great players of the sport, but he did something that prevented him from being able to be elected. He gambled on baseball. And again, I just think that's a hard line that if you're going to start to say gambling is okay, then once you start to question the legitimacy of the games themselves, the sport loses all its credibility. And once that happens, when you see a great play, you go, was that a fix? Was that real? And then at least for me, the lure of the sport is gone, because when you see something great, you want to assume, you have to assume that it's real. That's what makes it magical, that this guy actually did that. If it's fixed, then it's like professional wrestling. You're like, all right, it's like watching the Rocky movies, which I wish were real, but it's preordained already.
Oh, right back to Rocky. Always have a Rocky
Always.
comment. Yes.
All right. We're at the last minute of the show. I couldn't let it go with 2 hours without mentioning Rocky. All right, my dear friends, this has been the Mac, Jack, Pags, Paul, Doc, and everybody else debate show. They'll be back again here tomorrow with the NFL show, 8 a.m. on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. Until then, everybody have yourselves a happy, wonderful, terrific, and wonderful Saturday.